Welcome to Ecosystem North. I'm Jamie Sunsbach. Each week, Ecosystem North shines a spotlight on the people and organizations that support our region's entrepreneurs, uncovering the real story of what inspires and drives them to be entrepreneurial champions. I definitely spend a lot of time with people here in southern Minnesota getting to know them, but few have impressed me as much with an awesome resume as our next guest. He is a New York Times best-selling comic book writer. He is an entrepreneur. He is an ecosystem builder here in Rochester and Austin, and that's Austin, Minnesota, not Austin, Texas, for those of you watching this podcast who are not from Minnesota. And currently, he's a small business consultant at RAEDI, the Rochester Area Economic Development, Inc. So welcome to Ecosystem North, Sean Williams.
Thanks, Jamie.
How we start these things is we want to learn a little bit about your background. That's the purpose of this podcast, is to really celebrate ecosystem builders. Sometimes we feel that ecosystem builders aren't as celebrated. We tend to put all of our focus and energy on entrepreneurs. And so we want to celebrate our ecosystem builders, and you're one of the best that I know in the business. And if that's not, sucking up to you, I don't know what is. But every ecosystem builder has a story. So we want to know, where'd you grow up, and what your background is, and what brought you to Minnesota?
Yeah, so the short version is that I grew up in Montana for middle school and high school, and then went to the University of Southern California for my undergrad, majoring in cinema, television production. And I started out going into it, like I think everyone who goes into film school wanting to be a director. And then over the course of undergrad, realized that my strengths lied more in producing, and helping other people create their vision. And so that's kind of, just going with the flow. That was where I kind of ended up. I did some writing as well. Writing and producing kind of went hand in hand for me. So I did some producing on my own, produced a couple independent films. One of them that I was a producer on ended up going to Sundance in 2003. It was called The Beat. And the director of that, Brandon Saunier, was the youngest director to get into Sundance at the time, because we shot it between sophomore and junior year of college. And so did the independent producer thing for a while. And then Brandon and I ended up a production company with his writing partner in 2010, I believe, called Foot in the Door Entertainment. And that was specifically serving the need of bridging the gap between film school and the real world. Because, the way film school and a lot of undergrad programs work, they give you the tools and then they just kind of shove you out the door and say, okay, now go do. And, most people need a little bit more hand holding than that. So, seeing that there wasn't that infrastructure in place in Hollywood already, we basically just had an open submission policy for alumni of USC at first. And then we were going to add more schools as we went along. We signed a few screenwriters, helped them develop their scripts, got at least one of them agents through the process and everything. And then my wife got a job here in Minnesota. And so that kind of put the kibosh on the whole thing. And right around that time, through the writing and producing stuff, I started to make more and more connections in the comic book world. Even to the point of getting the opportunity to write what would become Ferris. And the creator of that, Bill Willingham, actually lives over in Castle Manorville. And so it was one of those like weird serendipity things where it's like, we're moving to Rochester. You live down the street. I'm working for you kind of now. Okay, cool. All kind of happening at the same time. And so I could do comics from Minnesota, and, kind of went all in on that and wrote comics professionally for a couple of years. And then, saw that again, like the system was broken and doing creator-owned comics, you either had to be independently wealthy, because there's not a lot of money in creator-owned comics, or not have any kind of life between having a job and trying to do your own comic on the side. So my partner, who I co-founded the company with, and I hit on the solution of coming up with a flexible publishing schedule to help creators do this either while having a day job or while doing a book for Marvel or DC, because that was one of the big things we kept hearing from creators who were working professionals already. It's like, I'd love to do a creator-owned book. I have so many ideas, but I can't do it. I don't have the time. And so we came up with a super relaxed schedule, and then a distribution cycle that started with web comics and then went to digital issues and then trade paperbacks, and built out that whole pipeline. And that was going well for a while until Facebook really decided to destroy any type of interaction with the outside world. And so that really took a hit on things, and then ad blockers became prevalent. And so that whole webcomics revenue stream just dried up, which really made things more difficult. So yeah, did that, still have the comics publishing company, and about 2 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, probably at this point, I ended up getting looped into Magic Leap, the augmented reality headset company, which actually started out as a comic book company itself. And so there was a natural connection there. So I started talking to them about stuff and got more involved in AR, VR, XR, that whole tech side of the world. And kind of got me to where I'm at today. And as far as the ecosystem building stuff goes, in trying to build out Conquer, my publishing company, I hit on a newspaper story here in Austin about this co-working space, launch co-working space, and their startup factory, kind of lean startup curriculum and stuff. It's like, oh, well, maybe we can put Comiker through there and try and get some funding to help us grow and that kind of thing. And I'd done some reaching out to co-working spaces up in the cities and some programs going on up there. And since Comiker had been around for so long, there wasn't really a lot of interest. You know, we weren't a startup, which is silly to me. It's like a good idea is a good idea, whether or not like it's fresh or new or whatever. And we were actually one of the first publishing companies to actually care about diversity in the comic book industry. And so, like, you know, pretty early on, in fact, after our first books went to print, we're like, we need to like make diversity our thing, because all of our books, without even realizing it, we looked around and realized that all of our books had some element of diversity that we weren't seeing in the industry elsewhere. Either because representation on the pages or in the creators of the books themselves. It's like, let's lean into this. Let's make this our thing. And so we got a lot of interest, you know, in that direction from people. But since we've been around so long, there wasn't any support beyond that. So started with the co-working space, got into the third cohort of Startup Factory in Austin, and decided to run the an AR project through that. And then my predecessor here at launch retired, and so I kind of inherited the space, and that got me into ecosystem building, like on a professional level. So that's the long version, I guess.
No, that's good. And I was hoping you would actually tell that story at that length, knowing your background, because I think it's so interesting to hear where people come from. You know, you think of, you know, your various points in your career, in your life, and how, you know, really when you think about being a producer, you know, doing this sort of work you've done, helping underrepresented comic book creators, find a place to really shine and show their unique voices, and that's it's always, I see in your story, it's all about trying to find ways to help people. And I think,
no,
we
exactly.
naturally, those of us in the ecosystem building world sort of gravitate toward, people that come from those backgrounds kind of gravitate toward ecosystem building. So, it's just I think we're just fortunate you've literally ended up in our backyard. I don't want to, say Austin's our backyard, but you know what I mean, at least in our region, right?
Yeah, exactly. Coming from LA, moving to that was always the first thing I got when we moved here. Is like, you came from LA and you're living in rural Minnesota now, like, culture shock. But my wife grew up in the Twin Cities, has family here in Minnesota still. I grew up in Montana, so it wasn't that big of a leap. But to kind of ease that transition, and because more specifically, we couldn't find a house in Austin to rent right when we were moving. I think there was literally one house on the market for rent. And so it's like, okay, well, let's go to Rochester. My wife decided that, she wanted to commute for that first year, to try it out and see, Rochester is obviously bigger than Austin. But we lived in Kpop Park, so downtown was walkable, which was great. Even though Chester's was the only thing down there, I think, and Kathy's Pub or something like that.
That's the first time Kathy's Pub has been repped on our podcast, by the way. So good call.
Thanks.
Good shout out to Kathy's Pub.
I've never actually been there, but it's a cornerstone of downtown.
It is. It's historic.
Exactly. So we lived in Rochester for a year, and so Rochester's always had a special place in my heart. But then we moved to Austin, and in getting into the co-working space, and then getting tapped into the ecosystem by Judy, my predecessor. She referred me to you. She referred me to Natalie Sidarius of Deed. And, that really got me outside of Austin and into all of the resources that we have available in the region. And the thing that kind of surprised me when I got this job out of the gate was how narrowly focused all of these different communities can be, and not realizing everything else that's available out there that is literally just down the street, and that can help people grow businesses in their own town or attract businesses to their town, either if it's Austin or if it's Winona or whatever. And so I kind of made it my mission, as far as Austin was concerned, to get Austin on board with being a part of the region. And, it took time. It was frankly a little bit faster than I expected, given the initial pushback from people in the community. But we built out Austin Area Angels over this past year. And at this last board meeting, we got a lot of interest in saying, okay, this is working really well. Let's think bigger. Let's go beyond Austin, because this is a resource that will help Austin get on people's radar, and get Austin on the maps of these businesses that weren't even considering us or even thinking about us before. So it's taken time, but it really seems to be working well, with building out the regional infrastructure and not just the local ones.
So you've covered a little bit about what you've done in Austin, and there's a little bit of crossover, if you will, with Rochester. Mm-hmm. So could you talk about really how you started interacting more in the city of Rochester proper with your work with RAEDI?
So I was working in Austin and working part-time over here, and in January of this year, basically, word started getting to me that you know, Rochester needed some help. You know, some more manpower. Did I have the bandwidth to help them out and to kind of do what I was doing in Austin, but to do it in Rochester as well. And having the bandwidth at the time, this was all pre-COVID, obviously. I said yes. And so I started, you know, helping run the Mayo Clinic Business Accelerator, started helping out with the Southeast Minnesota Capital Fund, you know, really just mimicking the stuff that I was doing in Austin over in Rochester. And that's kind of evolved over the course of the pandemic to, you know, administering, you know, the grants for both Olmsted County and Mower County for the small business relief programs that came out of the CARES Act. That's been a majority of my time, you know, for the last 6 months, has been working on those and helping those small businesses get those grants so that they can keep their doors open and the lights on.
I think that's what, you know, a lot of people ask me when we're talking about connecting, and I say, oh, you should connect with Sean. And they're like, well, you know, I explain a little bit about what you do. And really, I play up the grants work. I mean, you know, you did a massive amount of work, both in Austin and here with getting that CARES money into the hands of entrepreneurs and small businesses and larger businesses. Which is amazing. And I'm sure, you know, it was painful, but it's got to be a bit rewarding too, to see that money gets in the hands of people that need it. And sure, it was, you know, had its frustrating points, but I think, you know, people don't appreciate the fact that there are people like you that are really working day and night. And literally, I know, because we were in contact off and on. You're like, I can't do this. I got to work on this like half the night or something like that.
Yeah, I sent emails at 11:30 last night. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's really appreciated work, and it's really something that people, you know, with all the stuff with the pandemic. I mean, that I don't think people take the time to appreciate. I'm sure they find ways to complain about stuff to you all the time, but I just, you know, want to say I think you're doing a great job with that, and I think there's a lot of businesses that have benefited from your hard work.
Oh, well, thank you. No, there are people in particular that do the complaining and are very vocal about stuff, but then at the same time, like, you know, just getting, you know, a thank you note in the mail from some of these businesses, it totally makes up for every single complaint that we get. And yeah, like, I think it's easy for people these days, in particular, with everything being digital. It's easy for people to forget that there's a real person doing, you know, the work on the other end of things. This is not some automated process or anything like that. So yeah, no, the grant stuff has been a big part of my life for the last 6 months. And especially with the struggles of like working from home, like, you know, we've got a kid and 2 dogs who are getting older and all this stuff. And there's a lot of variables vying for attention all the time, which definitely makes things harder as well. But the nice thing too is, you know, every now and then I would get the opportunity to work one-on-one with one of these businesses, either through doing, you know, a pitch practice for, you know, Austin Area Angels or for the Southeast Minnesota Capital Fund. Or, you know, I'd get to do like a design sprint workshop with them, or do a design sprint workshop, you know, lecture kind of like for the Ministar 15 thing that just happened last month. And like those, being able to get, you know, my hands dirty again. It's like, oh yeah, this is why I fell in love with this job. This is why I fell in love with, you know, doing this kind of stuff, is helping people and getting them excited about it and be like, oh my God, I got so much from this, and I'm totally going to do this next time we have a meeting or whatever. And so, yeah, so it's, you know, you got to hold on to that stuff that keeps you going. Because, you know, sometimes life is a drag, especially these days. So.
Yeah, and it's really good. You actually are very good at answering questions I was going to throw at you before you even got them. So congratulations.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I don't know what that really means, but you know, because the next question I was going to ask is about, you know, real bright spots. You know, it's been a difficult year, and and what are the real bright spots? I think you answered that question just now, with your passion and with helping to see businesses surviving even in this crazy time. So we'll move on to the next question, which is, if you can think about, even try to guess it. Okay, yeah, we'll play the what am I thinking? Yeah, you probably don't want to know. Okay. So when we think about, in the next 5 years, what's your sort of personal vision for what the entrepreneurial ecosystem could be, let's just say in the Rochester area, over the next maybe 5 years? What would you like to see happen in those 5 years to really push forward support for entrepreneurs in the region?
I really want, and as you know, we're working on this right now. I really want to see the support system for entrepreneurs kind of like streamlined and, made easier and more accessible to everyone in the community, and more efficient too. Like, right now, there's a lot of, if you have to get put into the system in order to benefit from it, kind of like what happened with me, where, if I hadn't connected with Judy through the co-working space, then I wouldn't have met you, I wouldn't have met Natalie, and, I wouldn't be here probably. Lowering that barrier of entry where it's like, you have to have somebody, I want people to be able to get here on their own as easily as possible without even necessarily knowing their destination or that this is where they need to be, which, as you know, we're working on that right now. So I don't think it's going to take 5 years, but it'll be interesting to see what happens once that's in place, and, seeing that flywheel spin up and what goes from there. Because I think Rochester has more potential than, almost any city I know. It's got so much potential energy built up into it, especially with the remote working stuff going on. It's like, it could just explode if given, the right push in the right direction. So, and I think we'll get it there. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, and I think you touched on definitely your background with some of the work you've done around inclusivity and diversity in the comics world. That's something that you know as well as I do, that we're really focused on and really trying to level the playing field for our underrepresented entrepreneurs in our community. So that's a big piece, I think, of that vision too, is to be able to be included, as you said, inclusive of anyone who really wants to start a business and getting those supports that they need. So yeah, I think just building on what you're saying, I mean, that's really, I always say that if I'm going to discriminate against someone, it's going to be on the basis of just not a really great idea. And that's the only sort of, and it's not like I'm kicking you out of the office because that's, a crappy idea. It's, no, that's cool. Here's some things you might want to think about and encourage them to try again, or to move, or they can encourage me to stop saying it's a bad idea and go prove me wrong. I'm okay with that too.
Proving people wrong is a very good motivator for some folks. So, myself included. And like, I think part of, getting back to the question, like, one of the things that I want to see change, and this is a weird, like, nuancy kind of thing, but I do think that it's an issue, is getting away from the word entrepreneurship, because so many people don't think of themselves as entrepreneurs, but they are. Like, small business owners are entrepreneurs, but they don't think of themselves as that. They think of themselves as a cafe owner or a shop owner, small business owner. And so, in using words that have become standardized, we're excluding those very people who we're trying to reach now. Whereas, for us, it's an easy shorthand that, everyone's on the same page when we use those terms. But when we're trying to bring people in, we got to go to where they are and not rely on the standards that we all, have come to use. Because jargon is jargon regardless of how, what industry you're in, and jargon is the number one barrier to keeping outside people out, almost like deliberately, and so that's one of the things that I teach in these pitch sessions, is if a pitch has too much jargon in it, it's like, we don't know what that means. Like, you have to be talking at third grade level. And so with, retooling the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Rochester, we kind of have to take that same approach of like, okay, how we're going into a class of third graders. How do we tell a third grader what entrepreneurship is? Okay, let's use those terms. And, I think reframing the conversation that way is going to make it a lot more inclusive, with little to no work on our end. Which is, it seems silly, but at the same time, it's an easy thing to change.
Spoken like a true writer. Words matter. Words matter.
They do. Well, and at the same point, like, representation matters. As we were talking about the other day, for a lot of these underserved communities, they don't see themselves in this ecosystem. And so therefore they don't think they're a part of it, or that they can be a part of it. And so, inviting them, to the table, inviting them to be a part of the conversation is really what's going to get them to realize, oh, this isn't, some weird, cabal of entrepreneurialism, that, anyone can do it, and that, it's not big and scary and secretive at all. Like, it's all very doable and learnable. Like, nobody is born knowing how to be an entrepreneur. Like, this is the one piece of advice that I would give to entrepreneurs, it's just like, nobody is born knowing how to do anything. Everything is learnable. Everything is learned by somebody at some point in their life. And so to think that you're not capable of learning that, I think, is one of the biggest things that people, get stuck on, So like, they're like, oh, well, I don't know how to do that. This person knows how to do it so well. Clearly I can never get to there. It's like, no, they learned how to do that. They learned how to get good at that. You can too. And so, that's, I think, an angle that, again, can be like told to the broader community, and, to get people to the table as well.
It's a great point, and it speaks to so many of my sleepless nights recently, figuring out how to create the tangible tactics, right, to work towards that. And I think the answer always for me is co-creation. It's working with groups like RAEDI. It's working with groups like the NAACP and other great groups like Diversity Council in our communities, and asking those questions, and trying to find a framework where we can brainstorm and figure out what do we do that makes it work. And so that's it's a big part of next year in 2021 for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So we're running a little short of time. So we're going to jump to our closing questions, the fun questions. So lightning round. What is one thing that people may not know about you?
One thing that people may not know about me is that I once co-hosted the talent show at my high school as Kermit the Frog, like with the puppet. Kermit the Frog co-hosted the puppet or the talent show.
Are you putting yourself in the seat of a Jim Henson, is what you're saying?
No. But I gotta say, after doing that and everything, and then going to LA, I actually worked for a stint in the mailroom at Brillstein Gray, which is a management company. But they managed Jim Henson back in the day. Bernie Brillstein did. And so being able to go into Bernie's office and see like an actual like Kermit the Frog, like all the time, it was just kind of like, and they had like a little, they had a Muppet version of Bernie, like that Jim had made for Bernie and all this stuff. So it was very like nerd outy. a bowl. And then actually getting to work with the Jim Henson Company later, again, was just like total, dream come true thing. So just to, one other thing about Kermit that, and this is getting a little personal, but we can get personal on here, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No one's going to see this. Trust me. That was self-deprecating podcast humor.
There you go. No, so one of the crazy things too for me, with Kermit, because I have a Kermit puppet, obviously, if I co-hosted a talent show with him, was when my kid was really little. I busted it out and like did a whole Kermit voice with her and everything, and with Kermit, and I'd heard this from like Sesame Street performers before, but in like interviews and documentaries and stuff, where they would bust out the puppet and be interacting with these kids and stuff, and the kids just like zero in on the puppet and totally forget the performers there. My kid did the same thing. So I busted out Kermit and was doing the voice and everything, and like she had a whole conversation just with him, and I wasn't there, and it was like the most mind-blowing thing ever. So even this past summer, like we did the same thing. Like I pulled him out and like just ended up doing it, and like for a whole morning she just played with Kermit. It was so crazy. So yay puppets.
Now if we could just do that with entrepreneurs, we'll have to work on that. Maybe there's something we could do around that. No, that's really cool.
Entrepreneurial puppet show.
I think you have firmly checked the box of something we did not know about you. So congratulations.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, no, you're welcome.
The next question is, who is doing great work right now to support entrepreneurs in our region, in Minnesota, but maybe isn't broadly known, like someone that doesn't get the spotlight on them? And then I always say, you can't say Collider, you can't say me or Amanda or anyone associated with our organization. Like who's the dark horse? Who's the unknown, the rising star, someone who's doing great work?
One underappreciated resource in our region, and for our region, I'm thinking Southern Minnesota, going beyond Southeast, because I'm going to grad school right now for my MBA at Mankato. And even before that, again, when I was getting tapped into the ecosystem, I was introduced to Yvonne Caribou and Stephanie over there at Mogwai Collaborative. And I mean, as you know, the Greater Minnesota Co-working Passport came out of that, when she was like, oh yeah, I've been talking to, Jamie about something like this, and, this is how things happen. But that building, and the people who work there is, it's shut down now, basically. Unfortunately, like the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, I think is closed, for this year. But yeah, Yvonne and, Stephanie, are kicking so much butt over in Mankato, and are more than willing to help out, again, above and beyond, which is what we do. That anytime I can refer somebody over there, it's they're a great untapped resource. And even though they're associated with the college, or at least Yvonne is, they're willing to help out and refer you to wherever, even if you're not a student. So, yeah, and the 1 million cups coming out of there, it's great. I love it. Love working with both of them.
Do you want to know the dirty little secret?
What?
So Yvonne was actually the last guest on Ecosystem North.
Oh,
and
really?
When I asked her the exact same question, she said you.
Oh my God.
That was a perfect loop. Episode 10, episode 11. Now it's referring back to, yeah, you've got a great loop going on there. So
I swear she didn't pay me off or anything. So.
No, that's cool. It just shows that, I love that our ecosystem builders are going out and, getting into other communities, but B, you could show that this is a real collaborative and we're really working together, and we're not afraid to refer people to the right people. And, that's what my first thing I ever said when we finally got Collider off the ground was I
Mhm.
wanted to wear a t-shirt that said this, but I thought it'd be a little bit crazy. It was basically no silos. And I would just walk
Mhm.
around downtown with the no silo t-shirt. So
No,
it's just great to
exactly.
see that spirit happening in our region.
Well, and especially with these government dictated, like, economic development regions and stuff. It's like there's no reason that I shouldn't be collaborating with Mankato. There's no reason I shouldn't be collaborating with the Twin Cities. Like, if I can get a business to resources that we don't have here, but they do exist there, I'm not going to say, like, no, don't go to Mankato, even though, exactly what you're looking for is over there because they're outside of our economic development zone. It's like, that's stupid. That's not how it works. My priority is helping the business and the entrepreneur, not, adhering to, imaginary lines.
Yep, absolutely. Amen. So last question, where can people find you if they're interested in learning more about the work you're doing? RAEDI, Austin, the 50,000 other places you seem to be. What's the best place to find you?
Yeah. So for Austin, we've got the Launch Co-working Space, which is launchaustinmn.com is the website there. Austin Area Angels is the angel group that we have over there. That's austinareaangels.org. RAEDI in Rochester is RAEDI.com. And that's probably the easiest way to reach me. I'm also on LinkedIn, but I don't really check it or anything. But people seem to find me there anyway, so I should probably update it. But yeah, so that's probably the best way to get in touch.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Sean, for taking the time to share your story and your enthusiasm for entrepreneurship in the region.
Thank you, Jamie. Thanks for having me.